Okay, I knew Surge was doomed the minute they let me love it. It was the 90s. Surge was this radioactive green soda that tasted like someone melted a popsicle over a car battery and carbonated the result. It came in a can that looked like it lost a fight with Microsoft Paint, and every time I cracked one open, I felt like I was drinking something that was banned in at least 3 countries. Naturally, I was obsessed. I hoarded cans under my bed, I brought them to birthday parties like they were sacred relics, and I even wrote a very serious letter to my school principal asking why Surge wasn't offered in the cafeteria. Because I, a 14-year-old connoisseur of neon beverages, believed Surge to be the future of hydration. And then one day, I couldn't find any. It just vanished, pulled from the shelves like it had personally offended someone at the FDA. No warning, no goodbye, just stopped being stocked at the store. Yet another sample in a lifetime of trust issues. I still think about it, not because Surge was perfect. It wasn't. It probably shaved a year or 2 off of my lifespan and killed more than a few brain cells, clearly. But it had a spark. It stood out. And the worst part wasn't that it just disappeared, it was that it never got a chance to prove that it was worth keeping. And that feeling, that little cocktail of nostalgia, frustration, and helplessness when something you know is special gets quietly swept away because the crowd appeal wasn't there to support it, yeah, I'm feeling that again. Only this time it's not a citrus death syrup, it's a survival game. A beautiful, weird, ambitious survival game with Victorian-era gas lamp vibes, fey magic, and steampunk grit. And at this moment, I'm one of 1,200 players wandering through its dusty remains. It still looks like magic, but now it feels like a ghost story. Let's talk about Nightingale. Look, Nightingale isn't just different, it's bold. While other survival games shoved you into a gritty forest with stone axes and trauma, Nightingale dropped you off into a Victorian fantasy daydream. You're not some half-naked cave, well, maybe you are, but ideally you're not some half-naked caveman punching trees unless you choose to be. You're a waist-coated realm walker with an umbrella, jumping across dimensions powered by arcane cards and face sorcery like you're Mary Poppins. The aesthetic alone was enough to turn heads. Gaslamp elegance meets nightmare fantasy, like if Jules Verne and the Brothers Grimm started a survival co-op. The skyboxes looked hand-painted, the biomes had real mood. You'd walk through a shimmering portal into a sun-drenched valley of ancient ruins, or get dropped into a fog-drenched swamp glowing with twisted fey magic and giant tree people. Every realm felt handcrafted, and most of the time I'd stop what I was doing to look around. It even took me hours searching to find the right realm and the right spot in that realm to find a perfect spot for my base. But visuals weren't what kept me. It was the crafting. It has true depth. Not just make axe hit rock survival game busy work. Real choice. Your gear could change how you played. Weapon traits, stat perks, multiple materials and rarities, mod slots. It's a sandbox where your build actually felt like your own cobbled together solution from what you had available. I run a short bow that basically fires a shotgun blast of crits like Math had a vendetta, an umbrella that floats me across the huge areas in the game with ease, a sweet little dagger that gives me extra materials when I skin an animal, and climbing hooks with a grapple function that makes me feel like I'm a steampunk Spider-Man. I wasn't just role-playing, I was tinkering. And then came Realms Rebuilt, and for a moment I felt like Nightingale had a chance to take off. That September update wasn't just a polish pass, it was a rework. UI overhauls, progression smoothing, realm layout changes, new blueprints, better enemy pacing. It gave the game structure without gutting its soul. And just when I thought that was its peak, Nightingale City dropped. March 12th, a multi-stage dungeon, an actual story climax, and a boss fight that really felt really good. Not just a sack of health with legs, but a real challenge. For the first time, it felt like Nightingale had teeth. That's when I felt it again. That spark. That tiny voice that said, this could be it. The game could make it. But sparks don't catch fire without fuel. And by then, the fire was already dying. The sad part is, Nightingale didn't collapse because of one fatal flaw that could be fixed. It bled out from 1,000 tiny cuts after being released into the world too early. Nightingale launched into early access in February 2024, but instead of the solid foundation we have today, it stumbled out of the gate like a game still deciding what it wanted to be. Combat was clunky, enemies rushed at you with all of the tactical finesse of a Roomba, and the so-called endgame boiled down to grinding high-tier materials to min-max your gear for bullet sponge enemies while building your dream estate out of the game's impressive but mostly decorative pile of building pieces. Then came the server instability. The watch the player hub meant to connect the community together barely worked. Playing with friends became an exercise in frustration, and within days, what should have been a promising start turned into a live demo on how to drive players away. The numbers are brutal. Nightingale peaked at around 47,000 players at launch, and within weeks, that number fell off a cliff. And didn't bounce, it nosedived straight into obscurity. And while Nightingale was tripping over its own shoelaces, the rest of the survival genre kept humming along. Rust, Valheim, and Sons of the Forest all split the pre-2024 crowd, the gamers who played these type of games, and when Nightingale needed time to recover, Palworld showed up like a tactical nuke and sucked all of the oxygen out of the room. Then Enshrouded landed like a safer, more polished option, and Soulmask picked up the stragglers. Nightingale didn't just lose players, it lost its entire lane. And the consequences hit hard. On March 20th, Inflection quietly confirmed on Discord that Nightingale had not been commercially successful, and just a few days later they laid off some staff. The UK satellite office was gone, scrubbed from their website. These kind of cuts don't just hurt, they cripple the studio's ability to do good work in a timely manner. And here's the thing, you can feel it. In every patch note, every developer post, every "we're still working" Discord message, you can hear the desperation. The passion is still there, but it's like watching someone try to stop a ship from sinking using duct tape and good intentions. It's brutal, because with all of its heart and creativity, Nightingale still walked into the spotlight half-dressed, hoping no one would notice. Reviews were savage, not because critics hated the concept, but because what they played felt unfinished. Beautiful but shallow, crafting without meaning, combat without teeth. The headlines buried the spark beneath a mountain of not-yets and almosts. And the truth is, they weren't wrong. Nightingale launched into early access missing entire chunks of its identity. No offline mode, no appearance customization, no meaningful endgame, and mindless enemy AI, along with the entire progression paths that felt like placeholders. Even little things like building from containers, clumsy movement, or tutorial gaps all piled up until the whole thing felt like a chore list in a, admittedly very pretty wrapper. For the average player, Nightingale's first impressions weren't just bad, they were demoralizing. And once that momentum was gone, no amount of patches could rebuild that hype. Let's be honest, survival games don't get second chances. Not in today's gaming market. Not when the game's crowded with giants and the player base has the attention span of a caffeine-chugging squirrel. But here's where Nightingale gets weird. Because despite everything, the bleeding player count, the layoffs, the disappearing marketing budget, they're still updating the game. They added offline mode back in May, finally giving solo players a reason to touch the game again. Realms Rebuilt in September wasn't just a patch, it was a partial resurrection. Progression actually made sense, navigation was clearer, enemy pacing felt more intentional. It was a kind of overhaul that should have revitalized the community and brought in new players to experience it. And then, last week, came Nightingale City. A full-blown story chapter expansion, a real boss fight, and the kind of polish that should have been in early access from day one. If this version of the game was first released, then we'd be having a very different conversation right now. But it didn't, and now we're sitting at a little over 1,200 players in a co-op survival game. The equivalent of a bowling alley rock show. The devs are still talking about the future, more story, more realms, more polish, and I believe they mean it. But I also know how this song ends. I've seen way too many games with great hearts and broken legs crawl toward the finish line, begging for just one more patch, one more surge in interest, Just one more miracle. Meanwhile, other survival games are surging up the charts. Gobbling up the audience, Nightingale needs to survive. Co-op survival fans who want tight gameplay loops, stable servers, and momentum. Nightingale needed to ignite. It needed to explode out of the gate and turn heads, but instead, it's limping through updates like a wounded stag in a forest full of wolves. It's not dead. Not yet, but unless something massive changes, it's not going to make the studio successful. Now, I didn't make this video because I love failed games. I made it because Nightingale wasn't supposed to be one. It has a unique vision, it has heart, it has this strange spellbound identity that sets it apart from the usual rusted-out survival clones. This was a game where you traveled across fey-touched realms with flintlock rifles and arcane cards, where you weren't just surviving just to build another ugly box base, unless that's what you wanted. You were exploring, crafting, and shaping a character and floating through the worlds that looked like they were painted by a fever dream. It's clear that it stumbled. The early access launch was far too early. Unfinished combat systems, quality of life, performance, all of it. But there's a soul there, a spark of life. And the worst part is, the game actually started getting good, but now nobody cares. Players got their first impression and left. They chased shinier toys, monster-filled memes, and safer, more popular grinds. The lackluster launch took the team's momentum and cleaved it down, leaving them with layoffs and office closures. And now, we've got a game, still being shaped by passionate devs with equally passionate players, hoping that Puck can snap his fingers and change Nightingale's fate. The problem isn't that Nightingale had issues that needed to be fixed, it was that it dared to launch before it was ready to face the public's unrelenting scrutiny. Players today don't give you the benefit of the doubt, they give you one shot. And if your UI is clunky, your combat isn't snappy, or your progression has even the faintest whiff of busy work, there'll be entire Reddit threads dissecting your failure before your servers even stabilize. Nightingale wasn't equipped for that kind of exposure. It came out half-formed, still stitching together core systems, still learning how to be a game instead of a minimum viable product. But the moment it hit early access, it wasn't judged as a work in progress, it was judged as a product. And the internet, as history shows, does not judge kindly. It pounces and tears things apart. Nightingale deserved better. Not because it was perfect, but because it was trying something completely different. And that should have counted for something. But the Steam charts show that it doesn't. And now, most people won't even realize what they missed when it's gone. That's all for today. You're welcome.